Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So, despite all the videos that I've made on Eternal and how to be the best Eternal player that you can be, potentially being top 100, aka, the best of the best the format can offer, despite, providing videos on the meta and the different decks that you can play and what's popular, I haven't really talked about deck archetypes. So deck archetypes is a very basic concept that I see a lot of people sort of failing to properly take advantage of, and I'd like to go through that concept today in this video. So obviously the different deck archetypes are aggro, control, combo, and then midrange are the traditional deck archetypes. And then you can take those archetypes and break them down into sub-archetypes. You have mid-range decks that are more control focused with removal spells. You have mid-range decks that are more aggressive and tempo focused with Morgana. You have aggro decks that can be, aggro should basically be aggro. There's not a lot of wiggle room there, but there are different ways you can build aggro with fearsome decks, elusive decks, straight up burn aggro, things of that nature. So every single type of deck has a sub-archetype. You have mid-range decks that go for high synergy. You have mid-range decks that are more grindy. You have combo decks that, are like Hecarim. I do consider Hecarim to be a combo deck. Or, Zed Gwen. You have combo decks like Lee Sin that are OTK. So there are tons of different types of combo decks. You have, Samir Akshan is definitely a combo deck as well. So, every single sub-archetype has its own, versions of decks. There's a lot of wiggle room there, but let's go through the basics first. So the first one is aggro. How do you build good aggro? And me kind of describing that as a top 100 player who had to play 0 games in Masters to break out into the top of the food chain. Again, 0 games in Masters played. Which, again, I don't know how many players can manage that, breaking into the top 100 with a win rate alone and 0 grinding, but I was able to do so. So talking about aggro, this is a Lulu deck. So again, Lulu is a high synergy aggro deck that essentially is designed to flip Lulu in as little as 3 support effects, which means that, ideally turn 4, Lulu can flip. Quite easily. Turn 5 at the latest, Lulu is flipping. She's leveling up by turn 4 or turn 5. That means that every single thing in your deck has to be built in such a way to facilitate that effect from happening, or facilitate that effect to happen in order to be a good Lulu aggro deck. So how does that happen? Well, it happens with a comprehensive suite of 1-drops, 2 of which have the support effect, and then 1 of which benefits by being supported. That's just like basic, first thing you should ever do if you're building a Lulu aggro deck is put in 1-drops. Every aggro deck should have at least 9 1-drops. I don't think you can build an aggressive deck without 9 1-drops. I don't think that exists. So 9 1-drops and sometimes even 12, depending on the deck. Something like Ziggs Poppy runs 12 1-drops. So 9 to 12 1-drops to build an effective aggro deck. Basic deck building comprehension. 9 1-drops. Or 12. That's what defines an aggro deck to me. And yes, you can build your aggro decks more burst oriented, which means that it's harder to interact with the creatures you do play. You can build your decks more burn oriented, so you're basically finishing opponents out with face damage. You can build your aggro decks to, again, insta-flip a champion with high synergy. Regardless of the option that you choose, you do have to pick a lane to be the most effective aggro deck possible. Right? Elusive spam, this one has a burn finish. A different elusive spam list, in order to be effective, has to be more burst oriented, which is using the new variety card. It's using the new variety card, Prancing Sea Spirit. So this is the burst oriented version, and if you look, it's basically half and half, 50-50 spells, all burst interaction. You have to pick a lane. If you don't pick a lane with aggro and dive into that lane as hard as possible, your aggro archetype will not function properly. So that's a great aggro, pretty straightforward. Burn finish, turbo level champ, or, so for example, Lulu's one example, but Annie's another one. Or super burst heavy. like an elusive spam deck. And like those are the three major avenues I can think of an effective aggro deck. Is burst, synergy, or just straight up burn to the face. Those make the most effective aggro decks. Next up, mid-range. Mid-range is slightly more versatile with how you can build it out. Again, you have high synergy options, which is one way of building out a mid-range deck. So something like Eloy Jarvan would be the example of a high synergy deck. Every single thing in the deck is designed to build the biggest tentacle possible and then flip Eloy, which is a 4-mana card. So yes, this is a mid-range deck. It is not an aggro deck. And then potentially flipping Jarvan on 6. So, you know, the top end is 6 mana. Chances are it's a mid-range deck. 6, 7 mana, 8 mana, it's a mid-range construction. And you can see here that we only have the 1/1 drop. So this is like your archetypal high synergy mid-range type of list. Has a little bit of everything in there. Other types of mid-range that you can play. Poros is another high synergy variant, right? So you're running, you know, this has a lot of 1-drops, but the thing that makes this a mid-range deck is that it doesn't really go off until you get a critical number of snacks going. So the 1-drops you play are bad and they're not aggressive until that mid-range kind of tipping point when Poro King gets to level and then you get to go off. So this is a high synergy deck. You have, you know, racial-based decks, so things like Nico. How do you build a good Nico deck? It's not easy, you know. Jamming in Omen Hawk and Snowdog is a good start, but that's not going to get you all the way there in most cases. Those cards are very good. Don't get me wrong. Snowdog and Omen Hawk are great, but I do see a lot of people depending on them a bit too much. They're just a tool to help buff the stats of whatever your real win con is. You're not just going to be able to attack twice with Snowdog and play an Omen Hawk and win the game. You need, like, it's just a tool to get you to your actual win con. So again, these are like Omen Hawk and Snowdog being archetypal mid-range cards. You know, again, this functions similar to Poros, where again your 1-drops are too small and too bad to be aggressive, and it's only once you get a critical number of buffs in with Garen, Royal Simmerwing, Talon Strike, Ferocious Flips. That's kind of, you know, you're still aiming for that 7 mana slot, you know, winning by turn 7. This is still a high synergy mid-range deck. Other types of mid-range, Azir Aurelia, again, token mid-range. So again, you're not winning early on. It's only once you set up Exodia, which is, you know, your Emperor Dais, your Azir, your Desert's Wrath, your Domination, and then Aurelia playing Blade Dance. It's only then, after several turns, that you're able to kind of get to where it is you're trying to get to. So Aurelia is like token mid-range. Control decks, there is, you know, again, a lot more variety in the way that you can play a control deck. You can play creature control, which is something like Thresh Nasus, where again, you play very few actual control spells, but you're just trading in all of your creatures until you get that big, you know, your Thresh leveled or your Nasus leveled and that sort of thing. So this is like creature control. You have, creature control is very easy to pilot for standard players. You have things like Ramp, and Ramp can be slightly more control oriented or it can be slightly more combo oriented depending on its construction. I believe that good Ramp players should always, like if you're actually not just playing like casual and you actually want to take, you know, a Ramp list to Diamond and higher, which I have done. I'm kind of, Ramp is a pretty staple pet deck for me. If you plan on doing that, I highly recommend that you include proper stall, proper responses. So Three Sisters, Cosmic Youngling for the stall. Again, yes, you have your Ramp cards, but you've got the 3 Harsh Winds. You've got the It the Stairs, the Buried in Ice. You know, a lot of the people that I play against who run Ramp shells, like bad Ramp shells, will just be like all in on playing nothing but Ramp, and then they'll jam the She Who Wanders. They'll play nothing but Ramp. They'll jam the Volibear. They'll play nothing but Ramp, and then jam the Field of Rush. Sometimes they'll even run the 10 mana card that gives you more, lets you play more 10 mana cards. It's not going to be great. You're going to run into Ziggs Poppy and just like instantly your Nexus will explode. You're not going to be able to maintain a positive win rate by going that in on the combo. And in this case, like, yeah, so it's up to you. Do you want to build it out more controlly with like avalanches and Blighted Ravines? Do you want to build it out more stall oriented with healing and frostbites? Do you want to build it out, you know, again, it's up to you. It's up to you. This is the construction that I find that works. But, you know, so again, that's more of a combo. Ramp is more of a combo oriented deck, but you can build it out more control like if you want to. And then you have high synergy control decks as well. So, you know, Jace Lux being probably one of the best control decks in the game right now. Just like period full stop from a win rate perspective, it's sitting at like 58%. And if you don't know that, control decks typically don't do very well in LOR, at least in standard. So having a control deck maintain a 58% win rate means that it's like, it's god tier essentially. Because it's much easier to pilot aggro than control. And for this deck to be that consistent as a control deck is insane, like absolutely nutty. So this deck is very, very good. This is a high synergy control deck, where again you just have a little bit of everything. You got tons of control spells. You have, you know, lots of chump blockers. You have high value champions, and you have big spells that do a variety of different things. So it is exceptionally important that regardless of which archetype that you're building, whether it is control, whether it is combo, whether it is aggro, or it is mid-range, that you have a very, very clear idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish with that deck. One of the common mistakes that I see, most common mistakes that I see, in kind of standard players migrating to Eternal, who are usually like hard stuck in Diamond. The most common mistake that I see is that they just jam Sunken Temple into everything. It's like, I'm playing Yi, P and Z, and like I'm just going to play Yi for mana discounts, and then I'm going to play Sunken Temple, and then I'm going to play a bunch of pings and profit, and then Karma on 10 or something, and like just hope that like I get there somewhere. This is so bad. I can't articulate how bad it is. A good control deck, you know, I run the 3 Aftershocks in Jace Lux, so like as soon as you slam that temple, Aftershock, it's gone. It's just immediately gone the minute that you play that temple in your Yi deck. So now your deck doesn't function anymore. So it's bad into control. It's bad into aggro, because by the time you play your tempo, I've already aggroed you down. So it's bad into aggro. The only thing it's actually good into is mid-range. And I find that a lot on casual ladder, that like a lot of decks are designed to punish mid-range as much as possible. But it's a very strange thing to focus on, because mid-range isn't that good in Eternal. Tempo mid-range is the best thing in Standard. Like everything is tempo mid-range. Everything is like an Eddy pile, tempo mid-range, every single deck. Doesn't matter what you play. In Eternal, while tempo mid-range and Eddy card piles have their place, they are not effectively better than everything else in the game, which is why I love the format. Because if everything was an Eddy card pile, then there'd be no reason for me to play this game. You could just jam Eddy into any of your decks, and it would just be superior to anything I could build or want to build and pilot. You know, why would I have such a massive win rate with birds if Eddy card piles were superior to birds in every respect? Well, they're not. Even something as memey as birds has its advantages, you know. Even something as memey as Lulu Auto level has its advantages into, you know, your Eddy card pile. So that's, you know, the biggest difference between Eternal and Standard is that every single archetype, whether it is aggro, whether it is mid-range, whether it is control, whether it is combo, has a lot of avenues for construction, as long as you know which lane you're building for. I would suggest, and you know, you guys know my opinion on this, that you lean away from memes, right? Lean away from gimmicks as much as you can. If you build a ramp shell, you know, you're trying to build the best ramp deck possible, I would say stay away from Hesho. I like, again, you will win some games where it's just like I played 4 ramp cards in quick succession and then I played Hesho, and the opponent's deck just wasn't constructed in such a way to punish me for that. So like, it will happen sometimes. It's just as often that your deck just explodes instantly. way before way before Hesho hits the board, your Nexus is exploding. And like, that's the big difference between like casual queue and ranked queue, is like, you will find the correct opponent for your meme in casual queue. In ranked, you will find the right person to punish you for your meme every single time, which is why I think so many people stay away from ranked ladder and Eternal. Is just because like they want to play their meme and they don't know how to make it sustainable into a ranked setting, right? If Ziggs Poppy is a 70% win rate deck when piloted by me, a 65% win rate deck piloted by everyone else, like how are you ever heshoing into that? Like, realistically speaking, how are you heshoing into that? Like, you're not. So again, keep in mind what it is your deck is trying to accomplish and build it to be as sustainable and durable as possible, while also picking a lane that is beneficial to your deck's construction. I see people, running fearsomes, and they'll just go like keyword fearsome. So like fearsome being an aggressive based deck, an aggro based deck, and they're just like, okay, well, I'm gonna jam Elise, and I'm gonna jam Vile, and then I'm gonna keyword fearsome every single other card in my deck. Keyword fearsome every single other card in my deck. If it says fearsome, we stick it to Shadow Isles. If it says fearsome, it goes in my deck, right? So this, like, just like auto click on everything. Auto clicking on every single card that says fearsome. I've even seen people run this, which again makes no sense in your in this type of construction. People will run this, and I don't know. Like, again, anything that says fearsome, they'll run. Riven Mist is obvious. Wraithcaller for the Allegiance. I've seen this. Like, again, don't run this in your fearsome construction. So just you need to put a lot more thought into making even your aggro deck durable. It should have things like deaths, even in the aggro deck, it should have Death's Grasp as a 3 of. I would personally go for Hate Spike as a 3 of as well. Something like this, right? And then cards like Sentinel and the other 4 mana card. The other 4 mana card being, where is he? Is he actually 3 mana? Oh, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, he's a 3 mana fearsome Buru Sentinel. So like all of a sudden when you're running the Vile plus the Hate Spike plus the Death's Grasp, cards like Buru Sentinel and Burgeoning Sentinel are like better. They're much better cards overall. So, what would you run instead? Well, Phantom Butler is not doing anything in your fearsome construction, just the way that the deck is designed. I would probably drop Callista as well. I don't think Callista's really doing anything. Deathless Knight's really bad, so probably Callista back in. Yeah, like that. So Wraithcaller, Riven Mist, Callista, Fearsome Skitterer, Death's Grasp, Buru Sentinel, Vile Feast, Mistwraith, Hate Spike, Elise, Arachnoid. Yeah, so basically this is basically the construction. If you were going to run like the most aggressive fearsome shell you could, you would still need the Haste Spikes and Death's Grasps and things like that if you want to run Burgeoning Sentinel and Buru Sentinel. Because again, if you're just running the Vile Feast for interaction, your opponent's just like not going to give you the Vile Feast. Like they'll just burst interact with their own stuff to the point that you'll just never get the Vile Feast off. And those fearsome units are useless. So again, like, we're not building for memes, we're building for sustainability. We know what our deck is trying to accomplish. It is an aggro fearsome deck. We want the curve to be low, we want the synergy to be high, and we want there to be sufficient interactivity to blow our opponents out. And that is basically archetype knowledge. Just like knowing what it is you're trying to do and building for that. As opposed to just keyword searching, jamming everything into the deck, hoping it gets there. Which is basically the way I see most people build decks, right? If they build the ramp deck, they jam the big 10 drop that gives them more 10 drops. If they build aggro, they jam the keyword for that type of region, and then they give it 0 interactivity. If they jam aggro, they don't pilot it properly or give it the sufficient number of 1 drops or run the right 1 drops. Like, just archetypal knowledge is the most basic way to get better at Eternal that you can do in this game. Like, even if you haven't been playing Eternal for long, you don't know what half of the cards do, you haven't read half the cards. Like, there's been a lot of cards released over the since 2020 when this game came out. There's been like a lot of different cards printed in the last 3 years. Even if you don't know what half of them do, it doesn't matter. As long as you have that core foundational archetype knowledge and know what you're going for, how to build it, and how to make it competitive, then you can take something like Birds and make it like the bane of people's existence. Then you can take Lulu aggro and make it the bane of people's existence. Like, just like instant concede on the choo-choo train attack. Like I'm not saying that these are like the best decks in the game, but I am saying that through archetype knowledge, through proper construction, you can make them better than they should be in any sort of appropriate context. And similarly, through bad archetype knowledge and poor competitive construction, you can take your archetype and make it worse than it should be. Make it less durable, more memey, more all in on one thing, and worse into very popular meta matchups. So that is Eternal King signing out. Remember, aggro, mid-range, combo, control, but also what kind of aggro, what kind of mid-range, what kind of combo, what kind of control. And if you can answer those questions, you can build the best decks in the game. This is Eternal King signing out.